Well, hello, hello. Welcome to Felipe Hemming and the coverage of the Earl David Worden, aka News Now Houston. Well, many people know who I am or may not know who I am, and many people know who Earl David Worden is. He was most recently convicted last week of molesting his kids, but that's not all we're here to talk about. I'm a investigative researcher and have been an investigative researcher for media outlets where I gather news content and provide it for the writers, and they take that then information and then turn that into the news stories that most people see. That content is created from body camera footage, dash camera footage, in-car recordings, 911 calls, and the like. And from that, the reporters or the journalists then put that content together to do that. My first interaction or my first content with Mr. Ward went back to 2015. But we'll cover all that in the next 60 minutes or so, and we'll get down to the brass tacks of where and why and who and how and all this good stuff that went into who is Earl David Warren and where he is today. So with that, I'll let you guys know where I've been for the last so many years. I finished my bachelor's degree in public administration. I'm currently in law school, and I'm a 1L, and I'm also working on my master's in public administration at the same time. So I'm kind of a busy dude. But in the meantime, I had the opportunity to sit down with you fine people and discuss the Earl David Worden matter and who he was and what he did as it relates to the First Amendment auditing community and the police accountability cop watch community. Mr. Worden like to believe he was intricately involved in all these matters. He's really just one person within the system, much like we all are. So going back to that, Earl David Warden first appeared on the scene in November of 2015 when he was the backup camera person for the Potosi. And the Potosi is Philip Turner of Turner v. Driver. And the first, here's Philip Turner had went down to the Galveston Police Department and was filming outside um, of their facility. And when he was arrested by a guy named a police officer named Archie Chapman, and then that then resulted in a lawsuit from Mr. Turner against the City of Galveston Police Department, as well as um, Mr. Chapman. Mr. Chapman's a known law enforcement officer in that area, and he was also involved in a attack that was captured on dash camera video where he threw a guy into the waves and wrestled him down for I guess either drunk in public or some other silly nonsense. But in the meantime, this is also where Philip Turner was refusing to provide information for the law enforcement about anything, and they had his car keys, and they rode around Galveston, which is not a very big town. It's a kind of a smaller town, and they found out where Mr. Turner's car was, and they went in and figured him out. But in the meantime, there was some static camera footage from Mr. Worden that documented the law enforcement officers going in, and then later on, Mr. Worden testified at the criminal trial against Mr. Archie Chapman. Archie Chapman was charged criminally with violating Mr. Turner's rights, the right of personal property, right of chattel. In this case, where the car is Mr. Turner's property, and Mr. Chapman entered it without Mr. Turner's permission. And as a result of that, he was charged. I mean, it was a very bold move on the behalf of the city attorney of Galveston to bring charges against this individual who was a sworn law enforcement officer and had been the law enforcement officer for that organization for a pretty good long period of time. So much so that he was able to retire without any incident. But that case was also very interesting because it was the first time that Mr. Worden had testified on the behalf of anyone other than himself. And when he got on stand, he gave some controversial input, and as a result, Mr. Archie Chapman walked and was not convicted because of, as a judge said, was that Mr. Chapman didn't have both feet inside the car, so he really didn't technically enter the vehicle. He just simply sat down in the vehicle. And then from there, life went on with Mr. Worden, and with Mr. Worden, he also then went ahead and started going out to different and various locations throughout South Texas. And in one case, he started hanging out and going around the Shell Refinery in Deer Park, which is really close to where he lives. It's a little bit south of where he lives, or lived. I don't know where he's living now. I know he's in the state prison or going to be entering the state prison, and so that'll be his new address. But in the meantime, he had frequented this refinery so much so that he wound up getting arrested by the local law enforcement in that area, and we had sent Philip Turner. I had sent Philip Turner out to the facility to view and see what's going on. But while he was there, he was then in turn arrested by local law enforcement for trespass. So it was kind of a weird dynamic that this occurred, and as a result of it occurring, I become aware of who Mr. Worden is. He had identified himself as David first, Dave or Dave Worden with an A, Warden, like prison warden. He'd actually say that. They know my name's is like Worden as in prison warden. And so when I called into the Harris County Sheriff's Department to try to figure out exactly what was going on and figure out exactly what was up and possibly help Mr. Worden get bond and walk free, because as far as we were concerned, he was simply a citizen journalist documenting stuff in his area, and as a result probably came across some individual law enforcement officers that did not recognize or honor his right to film in public, and as a result he was charged. But by sending Philip Turner down, I was on the phone with the Harris County District Attorney's Public Information Officer at the same time as Philip Turner was being arrested by the Deer Park Police Department for trespassing, and he had not trespassed, and and that whole situation came from there. But from this interaction here, Earl decided to make Deer Park kind of like his personal vendetta, and as a result of his expression of his personal vendetta, things kind of changed for him. He went so far out to go and make videos that got the attention of Mr. Tim Hill, who is the director of security for Deer Park, and as a result, it was called Boycott Shell, and here it is right here. He made this video here, and from this video, he got the attention of the Deer Park Police Department, and the Deer Park Police Department came on out and was trying to find out whether or not Earl was a threat. And in the process of trying to figure out whether Earl was a threat, they discovered that Earl had molested his children, and as a result of molesting his children, they had a case to investigate. So once they went for that case to investigate, they brought Mr. Worden. They brought Mr. Worden in, but it took him some time to get him in from the date that he made this video to where we're at today. So from this video here, we wind up going up to another video, which is this video here, which is his interview with the Deer Park Police Department. He'd gone to the Deer Park Police Department under the impression that I'm a smart enough career criminal that I could possibly go and fool these guys and not let them know what's up. But that didn't really work out for him, because what he wound up doing was sitting there and lying very poorly, because that's they'll tell you it's unnatural to lie, but that's what this guy did. He went out to the situation where he went and met with the local law enforcement officers, and the local law enforcement officers just weren't having it. They interviewed him, and that video's out there. It's called the Deer Park video, and here's what that looked like. He walked in and he thought that he had it all figured out. Well, he didn't have it all figured out. He wound up, this was 12 o'clock. Oh, okay. Listen, walking in, but he walked in and he met Detective Reed and met these other people, and as a result, Mr. Worden is now in prison, and that's where, this is that video there. I got this video the next day from Mr. Worden directly via Dropbox or Google Drive or something else like that, because it was my relationship with him through Photography is Not a Crime. And from this video here, it took them 2 years, or almost 2 years, maybe, but about just a little under 2 years to have him arrested. He was arrested in February of 2019, But this video here, which is an hour long, and he tells all kinds of fanciful stories about being a federal agent and working in top secret type of situations, being tasked out, or it's a very bizarre type of interaction when once you learn this guy's history, and we learn this guy's history completely through the assistance of uh, local individuals that work with and around Texas Public Radio, and as a result of their work, we then discovered Chief Espinoza, who was the one of the police officers or detectives. Actually, I think he was the detective that was responsible for Earl's initial rape arrest. And this is here. Al Espinosa talks to Dave Worden. This can be found on the Teresa Rayshard YouTube channel. And this is where Texas Public Radio, a representative from Texas Public Radio, went out to talk to Al Espinosa about what he knew or did or experienced as a law enforcement officer as when he investigated Earl David Worden for his charge of aggravated rape and kidnapping, where he, while working for his father, who owned Worden Security, working at a local car lot, a Ford dealership, then took a security car or a Houston Police Department car, not quite sure because both of the cars wound up being found missing, stolen with gunshot holes in them and all kinds of other stuff that they'd been vandalized or damaged. And Mr. Ward had a history of stealing cars as well. He was after his service in the military, he really went off the rails, or maybe he went off the rails while he was in the military. But and from this here, from talking to Al Espinosa, we learned even more. And this is during the time frame after I had received this video from Earl and started really trying to say, okay, we got something we need to figure out here. And so we did. We really figured out exactly who we were dealing with, and what this guy was about. And it was about taking opportunity and positions that he's been in, and then using that then to potentially abuse people, or in this case, rape at gunpoint. But once he returned from prison, his newest victims were his children, and so that's where after he's then arrested, or the grand jury then finds him guilty as charged. This is where he was actually indicted. Here's his arrest warrant for Earl. I'm sorry if I'm not as smooth as I once was. It's just things change, and I'm a little rusty at this. This is the warrant for Earl's arrest. This was filed February 25th of 2019. As it reads, to any peace officer of the state of Texas, complaint has been made under the oath that alleges in Harris County, Texas, that the above named person, Earl David Worden, hereinafter styled as a defendant, did on or about 1/1/1997 commit the offense of sexual assault on a child between the ages of 14 and 17. And then from there, it went on to where he was. This is his history. This is what he was doing just during prior. This is Earl back when he went to prison in 2003 for felon with a firearm. And this is his criminal record from the Texas Department of Corrections regarding that. Like here, this is a felony charge of possession of the firearm. Back in 2014, he's got this is a kind of a weird kind of kismet type situation. This time of year is not very good for Earl. Everybody else is out and Merry Christmas. Earl's going to prison. So Earl, this is not the first Christmas Earl spent in prison, and it's not going to be Earl's last Christmas spent in prison. Holiday season must suck for him, and so this is kind of the stuff that was going out. So this is the stuff that had happened to him. This is his case from earlier with the forcible aggravated sexual assault. Intentionally knowing and use of force against, violence against, threatening a person of presence. Right there, you can read it. And as complaint is cause of or penetration of the vagina and complaint by place of sexual. He raped this woman at gunpoint, July 4th, 1985. And so then from there, so this is this great guy that so many people were. We didn't have access to these records, with photography crime. Criminal records, much like this, are very difficult to get a hold of, and you have to get them in person. So they don't appear on the internet anywhere. So being able to use databases did not allow for myself or others to do what would be called due diligence to really truly investigate who Earl David Worden was. And here's his unauthorized use of motor vehicle. That was also a secondary charge related to his prior indictment for taking this car while committing that rape. And so he was, he got out, he did his time, he got out, and he couldn't stay out of trouble. He just simply just had a very difficult time staying out of trouble, and he was sentenced for the, convicted of the felony in district court of possession of firearm, sexual assault, and unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. And he went to received in TJC custody in 1999, and his date of discharge was 2003. So from that, Earl got involved in some other stuff, trying to figure out where to go, what to do, and get outside of, I guess, try to stay outside of the cage. But instead, he wound up, not doing that. He wound up molesting his young children, and and he was subsequently charged and then later convicted. But in the meantime, where the average individual, I believe, that was under the potential of a life-changing type of allegation, such as he was, he didn't stop. He went out, and a couple months later, he filed a false police report with the Galveston County Sheriff's Office, alleging 2 individuals had gone to his home and threatened him with a great bodily harm with a firearm. He claimed that the report had documented aggravated assault at his home in San Leon, that the victim, Earl David Worden, stated someone had just pointed a handgun at him. Was last seen driving northbound on Highway 146 in an older model car with Illinois plates. That didn't happen, and it was simply because that people would not want to go along and get along with him, and were simply not covering up for him. People had really discovered exactly who he was, and he didn't stop. He didn't stop there. Once he knew that I was no longer just keeping my mouth shut, I went ahead and shared that video. I went ahead and took the content that he had given me, and I'm sure he had given it to other people, and made sure that it was seen, because he was running around trying to claim that he was being targeted as an activist. And that's not true. That's not true in any way, shape, or form. Earl was not responsible or involved in any type of investigations, or had any contact with any type of agents or agencies or anything like that, other than being an inmate or being arrested or being a detained person and stuff like that. That's the extent of Mr. Worden's contact with law enforcement. Was that simply pointing a camera at them and doing what he did, and now, or being in the care and custody of them for extended periods of time. But that didn't stop him. So he kept on going. So he came at me, he came at my family, and he did all kinds of other stuff, and directed stuff towards other people as well. He went so far to claim that people were trying to kill him, or trying to send a hit team to kill him. So here is one of his many videos that he made regarding it. He called the Manson and Merb cult sends a hit team for me. They believe that somehow, some way, a group of people in California decided that they were going to send somebody out. That's not even what happened. What actually happened was that a guy from local man who lives in the Harris County area, who followed this type of stuff on YouTube, became heavily involved and interested in making sure that the word got out that this guy was, not telling the truth, and that he had no inside information about the Tuttles, and then that he had no inside or influence of what was going on in law enforcement area. But instead, he came out and made this claim, and he made this claim nearly immediately after this incident happened, and he then also accused me of paying for this guy to come out and do this, like $5,000 or some silliness, and that's not either. This is the video that he made almost immediately after that, and we can run it for a couple seconds, because what's he going to do? He's going to file a copyright claim from prison. Good luck. This is I welcome it. Here it is right here. This is him. Watch his eyes and see what he does.
Good evening, guys. I'm just giving you a quick heads up. I'm putting a video together right now. There was a hit team sent after me today, and I'm getting the video together. There is video, and I'm putting it together now. I'll have it up as quick as I can. You guys watch for it. I'm not sure if it'll go up here or on my son's channel, News Now Community, or both. I'll probably put it up on both. This stuff has just gotten out of control. It has gotten out of control. I just got off the phone with my attorney, and we're going this week for orders of protection, restraining orders against several people. They are all members of or associated with the Manson Merb cult, and that is who came after me today. Like I said, I'll have a video up as quick as I can get it. I'm still getting video from the field, from other people.
That's some more of Dave's humor. Again, again that never happened. He had done and gone about doing all kinds of other stuff. This is the video that he made immediately after I was successful at getting his channel demonetized. His primary channel source of revenue was this channel right here, and this is where he's making this video.
Hey guys, man, there is some funky stuff going on with YouTube. They're changing stuff up, and I don't know. But so a family.
What this guy actually did throughout the time, he just gave us the more and more he shot these videos or created these videos where he lied. It gave us the opportunity to see some of his tells. The second this guy breaks eye contact and starts looking away, that's when he starts working on his fictions. He's just a horrible liar. His channel was demonetized, and then he would then come back later on, and then claim that we're going after the new channel. And all kinds of other silliness, and file bar complaints and do all kinds of other stuff. Here it is right here where he's claiming that we attacking the new channel. Well, no, it is what it is. And so, this was not a one type shot or one situation. This guy, from the point of him being arrested, my attention to him and his case did not end, and obviously we're still carrying on a week later after his conviction. But because this guy went so very far during the period of time from his indictment to very, very short trial of 3 days, I think, to where we're at today. And it was just a matter of knowing that here's the truth, here's the facts. These law enforcement, knowing the guy, he had no type of activism of any sort. He didn't meet with anybody. He didn't talk to anybody. And anytime that he would meet or talk to anybody, people always got this funny vibe off him. They got this funny, funky feeling that, hey, this guy's kind of creepy. What's up about that? And then some people would just like, hey, I don't want to interact with this guy. And they were right. They were right. The guy is a slime ball, obviously. And so from there, he would do stuff like this, and do all kinds of other silly stuff to try to affect me or affect my family. Was key in getting multiple bar complaints filed, though all of them unfounded and all of them dismissed because it was all nonsense, absolute and utter nonsense. But this incident here, where he is on an active campaign, an active thing to try to discredit me or discredit anybody else, like for example here, where he claimed that Hemming and crew threatened Selena and Pratik. That's not even what happened. We'd gone out to Leon Valley to cover what was going on in Leon Valley, as well as go down to South Texas and see the facilities that were being used to house children. In the meantime, this whole Leon Valley thing was going on. Patrick had called me on the phone and from the bathroom to a water place right next to the Leon Valley Civic Center, Government Center, and where he had gone to go use the restroom while the majority of people were getting arrested. So I'd gone there and gone to him and called him PP Patrick. That hey, and I had a phone call where he called in, screaming and yelling and being all excited about people getting arrested, and I laughed and I told him to listen, then he accused me of somehow being responsible. No, man, I told people to stay away, and that's why I stayed away. That really wasn't the reason why I was there. I was actually gone in South Texas and went to South Texas to do something completely different and did. But as a result, he would go and do anything he possibly could to come at me. And so, it was to most parts it was quite humorous, because to the average person they probably would have bent out of shape or heard about it or anything like that. Oh, this mean man from Texas is talking about it. No, I knew exactly what he was doing and what he was about. I'm not the only one he went after. He went after many other people, and the biggest connection that I had with those people was that I was a person who spoke out against him. At no point in time did I ever give the guy the benefit of the doubt. So what this guy then later did, if you'd watched the Deer Park video, he believed that there's somehow, some way that a polygraph would then exonerate him. Well, polygraphs are not, cannot be used as evidence in court. They're not scientifically proven devices. They're hocus pocus. There's very few things that you can tell whether someone's being deceptive or not. Polygraph, some people believe, is one. Another is using fMRI technology. You can read about that. And this fMRI technology, it's just to detect deception. Other people say there's microexpressions, like I was trying to describe with Earl, his tells, what his body does when he is fabricating something, when he's lying or attempting to mislead. Those are the things that he was doing with his failure to make eye contact. Because when you're talking to a camera, you're supposed to talk as if you're talking to somebody who's directly in front of you, not as if you're looking off in outer space making stuff up, because that's what this guy was doing, was looking off in outer space trying to get creative. And often the very first time telling the lie was the very first time he told the lie on video. And that's what this guy would do. So he had gone and, obviously he was lying, because the polygraph tests were never shown, were never released, were never shown to anybody. And he went further from there. This guy was relentless when it came to what he was doing. But it all basically came down to where he was at as an individual, and doing the things that he would normally do, attempt to harass, berate, fabricate. It's the same thing he did with many law enforcement officers that would at one point in time arrest him. Oh, this person had this going on. Oh, this person's dating this person. No, dude, they just happen to catch you doing something stupid where they then in turn arrest you for that crime, or in some cases may have retaliated against you. And then it was documented. The case out of Pineville, yeah, he hurt that guy's feelings as a result. That guy arrested him, and then he was awarded some funds from the city of Pineville for the result of that arrest. That's the only lawsuit that I know of that was ever filed by Mr. Worden where he's ever successful. He did file other lawsuits, but one against myself and my wife and her firm, and another attorney in California, that were just summarily dismissed, and another person in Louisiana, and I think he even sued YouTube, if I recall the complaint properly. So he'd kind of threw out a bunch of stuff on the wall and figured, I'm going to sue all these people simultaneously. Well, that failed. And then he sued Joseph Silvaggio, the chief of police, and then later city manager for the town of Leon Valley, and that was dismissed because, for a guy with a war chest, he surely didn't employ very many attorneys to help him out. And that's where that went from there. And so this went on and on for since 2019 to where we were at today in December 2022, and where Earl David Worden was brought on trial for 3 days for molesting his daughters, and and the subsequent result was his conviction. And so the kind of the funny thing, and it's not really funny because this guy's never going to get out. He's never going to see the outside of day, and he was blatant. He would still make videos. So here he is making a video right outside of I think it was day one of jury selection, and it would make his comments and do the things he would do and sit there. And in this situation here, he wasn't lying about anything. It was jury selection. So, but again, this is a kind of a horrible situation for this guy. This is something that he did many years before that his children had then reported to law enforcement, and somehow, some way, their allegations against him fell between the cracks. Well, courtesy of the Deer Park Police Department, Detective Reed, and the prosecution of D.A. Ogg of Harris County, this man's now going to prison for 20 years. And that's where he's going to spend the latter portion of his life. He's 61 years old, years old now, and it's I don't think it's going to work out for him, unfortunately. So here is a picture of Mr. Worden, and as he's waiting day of the results from his jury. He had his two phones, his readers there, and he thinks he's all cocky and confident that he's going to walk. Well, we all know how that worked out. Very few hours later, after the jury met for lunch, Earl David Worden was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in the Texas Department of Corrections. And it's that's no place for anyone to spend the rest of their life. But that's what happened to them, and that's what that's people do eventually get justice, and I believe justice was served. And many other people believe the same way as children believe that, and because they've expressed that. And so from that also, the local DA's office, they did what they needed to. They shared their joy for Mr. Worden being being convicted. So much so they did put out a tweet about that. Well, here's the docket sheet from Earl. See, his state um, it started way back in like I said 2/21/2019, and we roll on down here all these activities, all these protective orders, all this other stuff. And pre-trial conference, this guy was trying to claim that he towards the end he was trying to claim that he wasn't getting a speedy trial. Well, this guy had plenty of activity. Here it is, 2/7/22. Here it is right here. It's where it started. You know, apparently on the 7th of December, defendant rejected the plea offer. So apparently on the 7th of December, they offered him a plea. And I don't know what the numbers were. I'd love to know what the numbers were, and if it were like a 10-year deal and they're going to let him walk or whatever it was. And there's a benefit of doing that. You're getting a guy off the streets. This is my understanding and talking to people that do this work. It's the benefit of getting a conviction because the guy will plea, which helps their statistics, which if you want to look at it at that. But also, it gets it gets conviction and he gets got off the street. But this guy rejected a plea offer. I'd love to find out what that was. I'd love to know what it was. And so from there they started the next day, and it went from there. And they had it was continued to the 12th, which was this past Monday. And the day 3, he went on there with Mr. Landers and Kobe DeBose, and they went through and they ran on down the whole situation. And certain people testified and told their stories. And it's where we're at. It's what happened to Earl, and later from that, Earl didn't really didn't do very well after that. He was then later convicted and found by a jury of his peers to spend the rest of his life in prison. And so it's a sad day for him, unfortunately. But so that's kind of the story of Earl. Where we're at now, we're still waiting on some kind of important documents and doing some other stuff, and trying to figure out what exactly we're gonna do. But here is Earl David Worden's arrest on the local news. They covered that up here, and that's what they got going on there. The local news showed exactly who he was, local, and so they went from there. But so. Once I have made contact or attempted to make contact with the court reporters and the people with that, because there's people that would like to read the transcripts for whatever reason, and they would like to know what was said, because this guy had actually gone out and said, "Oh, he made the allegation that I was being targeted by law enforcement because of my anti-law enforcement or police accountability activities." Not true. That's not why they went after. They went after you, Mr. Worden, because you molested your daughters. And you happen to make a threat against the law. Make a threat so much so that the local police department came out and decided they want to talk to you. There's what Harris County DA's in their celebration. Earl David Worden, age 61, was convicted by a jury of sexual assault of a child and sentenced to 20 years in prison. We are grateful to Assistant District Attorney Simone Colson and Rebecca Marshall for their work on this case, and that's what that was. And they really did a great job and did what they needed to do, and went from there. This is Earl in his very special suit that he was wearing in the beginning of his trial. If anybody hadn't seen that, there's what he was wearing one of the days that he went there. And we're back to this what I call Earl being prison ready. He's ready to go. He's sitting in that chair and enjoy the next 20 years. That's the last civilian clothes he's going to wear for a long, long, long time. And I hope he spends every single day in custody and he lives a very, very healthy life, and that he spends every solid day in custody, and nothing bad happens to the guy or anything like that. Because I mean, we're good with that. We're good with that. But we closed the book on Earl, and and as more stuff comes out, we will cover it and bring it out and discuss it. We will not go into great detail about certain person's testimony. We will. If I get a hold of Detective Reed's testimony and what he said, that would probably be better than what the testimony of his victims were, or we can then maybe censor or alter the victim's testimony if we can actually get it. I don't think we're going to get it because Texas law is very strict when it comes to anyone getting the transcript or records related to a crime of this nature, because a crime. It's a crime that the victims are victimized in this, and they are continually victimized when this type of stuff comes out. This changed back in the day, a couple 10 years, 15 years ago. Maybe that was a situation, but the victims of sexual crimes then became victimized in the media, questioning their did they deserve it, or silliness like that, stuff that was just unfair to the victim. And now we have laws in our country that prevent that from happening. But in that situation, it's many people feel we're in a better place for that. But in closing, that's where we're at. I'm happy. Other people are very happy that we no longer have to see this guy on YouTube or any other type of venue, Discord, Twitter, or anything else, where he is then spewing his lies, spewing his misinformation, claiming things that are completely untrue, and that's where we're at. We're the world is a better place as a result. And I'm very happy that his daughters received the justice they should have received way back when this crime occurred. And but it worked out. It didn't work out for Earl, but it worked out for his victims. What can be the lesson learned here? I guess if you got a crime that you're trying to hide, the last thing you want to do is go out and wave your finger in front of the law enforcement officers. Or I mean, maybe that wouldn't be bad, but maybe if you make a video like this one boycott Shell, I'm very tempted to play it all, but I don't want to. And you can find it. It's what it's titled, Boycott Shell, and you can go from there. And the place where it's currently being posted, besides a copy that I have now, is at Southern Illinois Police Observers. And those guys have some interesting content, and some good content, and they do good work on the topic of police accountability and government accountability. They've done some really good work with exposing people that have taken their position of authority and abused it. So that's what we're about. So in closing on the Earl thing, if anything changes, find out where he's at, get complete further records. I will follow up with that. But in the meantime, I'm going to return back to police accountability, documenting the misdeeds or misactions of law enforcement officers, and then showing and exposing and discussing it with you guys. Not just pointing fingers, but offering solutions. Because see, as a public administration major and a person who's working on getting their master's in public administration, what I've learned is there are ways and means within government to affect change, and how to work within the politics of it, what they call the public administration political dichotomy, how to really walk between the raindrops and influence making sure that the taxpayer is getting something of public value. When we don't ask when you work for the government for donations, we get it through taxation. We as government employees, we draw our income based upon the working and sweat of others. And as a person who works for a living, I appreciate what people pay in taxes, and do not like to see that taxes are wasted, whether it be wasted on paying settlements or paying lawsuits or to paying attorneys to defend individuals that should know better. Not saying that every lawsuit filed against a law enforcement officer or a law enforcement agency is valid, but the majority of them are, because the majority, there's very few frivolous lawsuits that I've encountered, other than those being maybe possibly filed by inmates that are potentially frivolous, but discover that many of these lawsuits have merit, and the courts have decided they have merit. So that's kind of stuff we're going to cover here in the future, is the totality of stories, and going from there. One of the most recent stories I'm working on is a story out of Nevada, Novato, California, up there in the Sonoma County area, where the police officer or sergeant responsible for training SWAT officers and doing all this super secret squirrel type stuff is shot a dog that was on a leash that he claimed that he was scared about. So and that the local animal control failed to prosecute him for this for the murder of this dog, and the local DA didn't prosecute him for negligent discharge of the firearm. So we really try. So I'm in the public records request process of that, trying to build that story together. Local media covered it, and we do a different look at stuff. We look and see, hey, what's this guy got going on? This guy's known and does that. So that's we're going to return back to that type of content, as well as potentially, those who are out there, citizen journalists that are documenting an incident that are non YouTubers, if you want to use that, but anyone that finds themselves there, as long as they're staying on the right side of the fence and they're not breaking the law in the process, and somehow, some way they wind up in a cage, we'll potentially cover that as well, because you do have a right, for the majority of the time, to be out in public filming public employees and their public activities, as long as you're not interfering with governmental activities. And if you're interfering with it's a narrow line in some cases, but the best situation is just do what you need to do, get what you need done. If you get told to leave. Just try to do everything you can to stay out of handcuffs. Don't run or anything like that, but comply, because the violation of rights or the restriction of rights has already occurred. So we're not going to point fingers or wag our fingers at these guys saying they're all this or all that, because that'd be ignorant and untrue. But what it is true is that if you are a party to an organization and misdeeds are going on, then you should speak and say something. And I've encountered in my recent years law enforcement officers that I go to school with that are no longer law enforcement officers that were whistleblowers that suffered the consequences of reporting their, especially in a large organization, reporting the crimes committed or reporting that they were asked to do something that was unlawful or illegal, like modifying the gang database, which is something that's been in local media here as well in the Southern California area. But that's what we're going to be working on in the future, and that's where Black Coat Media and my channel are going to be covering in the future, because it's a topic that is often avoided by the mainstream media for obvious reasons. They have to live and work in those communities, and any type of content or coverage that is not, cop saves the day type situation is, it's distasteful to them, and and law enforcement officers are a little tender about people pointing their fingers at them because we don't do the job and we don't have any idea. And we've all heard all those excuses, or maybe you haven't, about, because it comes back. They come back in social media, and they come back and make comments. And I'm not anti-police or anti-anything. I'm anti us spending money on things we shouldn't have to spend money on if a person just simply did their job, and if they didn't act outside the law, if they didn't unlawfully do something, and outside of these so-called split-second decisions, they cover it up. And we most recently had a term here in Los Angeles County with a sheriff named Alex Villanueva, who was come to find out, a pretty corrupt individual. But these are the people that we're trying to go after and expose and bring to the attention of the people that pay the bills, the taxpayers, and so that they can then make an informed decision about who's who and what's what, and then go from there. I think that's the role of journalism. I mean, that's the role of journalists, is to share the facts as they're seen and share them with the public, so they can then digest and form an opinion, not some pre-regurgitated, bias-driven, ad rev-driven type of stuff. I'm not doing this for any other purpose but to share what I discover with a wider audience, for the potential of that they start to see what I see or see what others have seen. And there's nothing wrong with that. And most people that are ethical and believe in ethics and understand that that this is the world we live in, we'll get it. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap everything on up here. I appreciate everybody who showed up and enjoyed me sitting here stumbling through this. But it's something that's going to come. And so if you would please like, subscribe, share, comment, and go from there. I welcome everybody back, and this is a whole new adventure. The Black Coat Media and Felipe Hemming are back in the business of police accountability, government accountability, but with solutions and more data and more facts and more cases and more information, but so much so that you as a citizen or as an independent person or whatever term you use to describe yourself, can make your own informed choices. But this was the coverage of Earl David Worden and a basic history of who he is and what he was and where he's going to be. And so I appreciate your time, and again, once again, thank you for joining. Good night. Merry Christmas.